Okay, yeah, welcome back to my class again today. First and foremost, I want to say a very big thank you to those that have subscribed and to those that are following me on my Facebook page. I also want to encourage you to please, as you watch this video, when you like the video and you find anything interesting in the video, please just put it in the comment section. This will help me. It will help the algorithm to push my video out so that more people will see it and more people will be able to follow me and subscribe to my channel. And I will really appreciate if you give me feedback through the comment section. Today we are going to look at um, class method. But I don't want the video to be too long, so I'm going to divide the class method lecture into three parts. The first part will be where we elevate the instance method to a class method. And then the second one will be where we use the class method decorator to actually create a class method. And then the third one will be where we use the class method as a constructor instead of the init method, right, that you see in a class. So that is actually the three portions in which I'm going to divide the class method into. So without wasting much time, let's get right in and see the lecture on class method. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to give me feedback through the comment. Use that to encourage me as you watch the video. Okay. Okay, let me write class method. Okay, why do we need this class method? The instance method, before you can actually call an instance method, you need to create an object for that class, right? But with the class method, you can actually access the class variable without instantiating that. So that is the purpose of this class method. So the first thing we are going to do is now is let's create a class and then instantiate the class, create an instance method, and then elevate the instance method to a class method. So the first thing we will do, we will also do the class class man, right? And then we'll go in and we'll say def. No, the first thing is let's create a class variable. We'll say apple, right? And we'll assign 0 to it. And then we'll come here, we'll say def init. And then we'll say self. And then we'll give it another variable, name. And then we'll come here, we'll say self dot name. And then we assign the name to it, man dot apple, right? Then inside this one, we'll say plus equals 1. That is, we increment it. So inside this, so after we instantiate this name, we now also carry out this one. Okay, so that is done. Def. So we are going to create an instance method. Let's call it woman, right? Woman. And then inside it, we'll supply self to it. Okay. Now inside this instance method, say print. Let me use my black again. We'll call a format string, and then we'll say apple eaten in the garden, right? Is right. So you now say self dot apple. So this is the instance method, right? Like we did in the last class that we have created. Now we've created the class, and then we created uh, the class variable, and then we have created this instance method here, and then this another instance method. This one is actually the constructor, which we are going to use to initialize, instantiate the object that we created for this class. Okay, now we have created this instance method, and we are going to print out this. This is done. We can actually create an object, which was what we did in the last class. But what we want to do is we want to elevate this instance method, right, to a class method. Python has a built-in method, which is what? Class method. Class method. This is going to be used to elevate this instance method to a class method. So what will happen here is that I will now come here and I will create a variable, which is what? Let's call it count. Then I'll assign, so I will now call class method, right? And then I will supply this woman to it. Okay, so this is it. So what have I done? I have created my class, right? And I've also created how many methods? Two methods inside. This is an instance method. This is another instance method. But what I have done here now is that I have elevated this instance method to a class method, which is what? Supplying this woman, which is the instance method, to a class method, which converts it to a class method, right? So this count has now become a class method. So I can actually call this count without instantiating this object, right? So if I say I should call this now, let's say I come here and I say, if I come here and I say class, I can say man, right? Dot count. If I say man dot count, that will come here, calling this method. And this method would then call this method. And to print out apple eaten in the garden is what? Self.apple. That will be what? 0, which is this one, 0. That's what will happen here. Meaning I can call this class method without instantiating this class. That is simply what this is doing, which is man.count. Now, let me explain this line. What this line does is that it takes this instance method, which is this one. It takes this instance method and then convert it to what? To a class method. So you are actually reading it this way. So this is the input, this is the process, and then this is my output. So it's actually good. Arabic is actually teaching us the proper way to read, which English is teaching us to read from left to right, but Arabic is teaching us to read from right to left. Now, in this programming, is actually from right to left. So the input in this now is the woman instance method, which is given to this class method. This class method now converted to this count, which is the count method. Now, I am calling this count method, which is a class method, through the class man.count. So this one will now go in here and then print out apple eaten in the garden is what? Is actually what? 0. Because self.apple, meaning this self.apple is going to access this apple and it's going to print out 0. Okay. But if I do this, let's instantiate this. I come here and I say, if I say, now this is my class. This is my class, right? I have created my class. I want to instantiate this class. If I come here and I say man, sorry, I say object one, object one. Then I say man, and I give it the first one, Adam, right? And I close this. When I do this, and I now call this count here by saying, let's say I bring this back here, and I say man dot count. This one will give me 1. It will give me apple eaten in the garden is what? 1. That is, this one will come here to give me 1. Because at that point, the moment I call this count, when I call this count, when this object is created, right? When this object is created, it's going to come here, supply this object 1 to self, then give this Adam to name. So name will be assigned to self.name. And then it will now carry out this one, which is what? Man.apple, increment by 1. So it's going to increment this apple to what? From 0 to what? To 1. That's what it will do. Now, when I now call, which is man.count, meaning I'm calling this, it will simply go in here and print out what is inside this place, which will be apple eating in the garden, then self.apple, which is accessing the apple that has been incremented by 1. So this one will print out 1. But the first one that I did, when I called before I created this object, will print out 0. So this is actually elevating an instance method to a class method by using the class function, class method function that is a built-in function in Python. So this is the first part that I'm showing you, that how to create a class method. You can create a class method by elevating an instance method to a class method and then instantiating it. Then you can now use the class to actually access that class method, which is this. So that is the first part I'm going to show you, which is what? Moving the class method to what? Upgrading an instance method to a class method. So let's go to the PyCharm and let me show you practically how to do this. And then in the next class, we are going to look at how to actually create a class method directly by using the class method decorator. Right? That's what we'll be looking at in the next class. So let's go to PyCharm and let me practically show you this. All right, so these are PyCharm. Now we are going to look at the class method, which is actually upgrading the instance method to a class method. Okay, so let's just create one new, then we'll call it class method.py. Okay, so this is it. Now we'll say class man, and then we'll come here and we'll say apple, assign 0 to it. That is, we create a class variable. Now we say def underscore init underscore, then we'll give it self first and then name. Okay, so the next thing now, we'll come here and we say self dot name, and we assign self dot name, we assign name to it, and then we now say man dot apple, we increment that by 1, right? And we'll come here. Now we've created our class. Okay, so we are going to create another instance variable, instance method, def, and we call it woman. And then, so we just have that, and then we come here and we say print. We'll call it a format string, and then we'll say the number of apple eaten in the garden. Okay, then colon, and then we'll do this, and we'll say self dot name. No, say self dot apple. Okay, so we are actually want to see this, because this self.apple is actually applicable to what? To the instance. So, this apple is a class variable which can be made available to every instance that is created for this class. So we can say self.apple, right? And then that is all. So this is the instance. Then we will now come here and say we want to elevate this woman. to a class variable. So we'll say count, and then we'll assign class method, then we'll assign woman to it. So this is this. Now we've created this. So we are done. Let's instantiate that class by saying object 1, right? Man, then we'll give it the name Adam. And then we can say object 2, we call it man, and then we'll give it the name if. Then we can now come here and say man dot count function. So what would this give us? And then we can equally say object 1 dot woman function. We can do this. Or we can say object 1 dot count. Now all of them will give us the same answer. So what we are saying is that we create a class variable, we create a class, and then a class variable, then we'll call the first method, which is what? The init method. And inside this init method, we are incrementing this class variable. And then we create another class, which is what? Woman. And this class is an instance method. We create another method, which is woman, and this is an instance method. Inside this instance method, we are saying print the number of apple eating in the garden. And then we are calling this self.apple, which we are using to access it. This is what we are going to access. So it's going to print out the value of this apple. Now, when we then we now pass this woman to a class method, which is a built-in method in Python that will convert this instance method to what? To a class method. Now, we instantiate the class with 2 objects. So by doing that, this man.apple, this apple will increase to 2. So when we say man.count, we are calling this count, which is a class method directly without even, we can even call it without instantiating. That here now, if we say man.count. Now this one will give us 0 because at that point, nothing has happened to this apple. It has not incremented. So it will give us 0. Then we now instantiate before we now call it again. This one will now give us 2, 2, 2. So this will be 0, 2, 2, 2. So let's execute it and see. That is it. The number of apple eating in the garden, the first one, which is what? Man.count. We are actually calling this count method without instantiating. That will give us apple will be what? 0. Now we instantiate with 2 objects. The first object, second object. That will increment this one to 2. So when we now call this again, man.count, it will be what? 2. Object 1.woman, we are calling this method, is going to give us 2. We are also using this object to call this method, which is this count method, that is also applicable to the object, and it will also give us 2. That is what I want to demonstrate to you in this class. So if you enjoyed this class, do not forget to click on the like button. So till we see in the next class.